Good afternoon to you. It's 5:07 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Always appreciate your contributions. The Speaker of the House has an idea on how to get through a spending fight this year that's taking place during the election. He says, let's kick this whole thing until March of next year and let an incoming President Trump handle what the budget looks like. And as we do that, as we pass yet another continuing resolution, we should attach a piece of legislation to it called the SAVE Act. You'll know the SAVE Act as a way to ensure that only American citizens register to vote in America. It's a great piece of legislation. Should it be connected to a spending fight? My next guest has, I would say, probably the most unique views on this subject in Washington. And so he joins us now. Congressman Matt Rosendale is back on the program. Sir, good to have you with us.
Always good to be with you, Vince.
So here's so my instinct earlier this week when I saw this was that it's a good thing to get this SAVE Act done. You know, and Washington, they suck at spending fights. They suck at it. They really, it never ends up good for us. But you think that that the SAVE Act and this spending package shouldn't be linked together at all. Is that right?
Well, first of all, let's show some shock that Matt Rosendale has some strong opinions. I mean, that's the shocker, right? And let's show some more shock that the Congress thinks that it is such an original idea to pass a continuing resolution to extend spending that we all voted against, to extend policies that we all voted against,
right,
just so we don't have to deal with it. My gosh, Vince, the Budget Act of 1974, okay, which calls for the 12 appropriation bills to be passed to transparently fund government, has been accomplished 4 times since 1974. Congress doesn't do its job.
Right.
And so they have used continuing resolutions and they have used omnibuses to fund government as a great big crutch because, quite frankly, they just don't want to do their job. So what I've said is we passed the SAVE Act. We passed House Bill 2, which was the most comprehensive and conservative piece of immigration and border security legislation that apparently, I'm told, has gone through Washington in several decades, if not the most conservative ever, okay? Those bills can be brought up right now. They're not. And the reason that they're not being brought up in the Senate, we passed them in the House, is that they won't pass it in the Senate. Chuck Schumer is not going to pass that. So why in the world does anybody think that we can attach the SAVE Act, which is the citizenship requirement to vote, which is already the law, but this is a standalone separate piece. Okay.
Right.
If we attach that to a CR, why is Chuck Schumer going to bring that up? Ooh, because he's afraid the House isn't going to fund the government if he pulls it away? Nobody believes that. You don't believe that, Vince.
Because the House will roll over in the end?
Yeah, you don't believe that if he strips that out, that the House is going to say, no, we've already left. We've done our job. You go ahead and do your job. That's just not going to be happening.
They're not willing to take it to the government shutdown phase. They're not willing to go the distance.
There's got to be a hammer. There has to be consequences. And if there's no consequences, if there's no hammer, if there's no downside, then guess what? Your bluff is not even a bluff. It's just a bad lie.
So
and guess what? I won't lie to the people of Montana.
Okay,
this is a bad strategy.
So, Congressman Rosendale, do you think that what's happening here is that Speaker Johnson is lumping in the SAVE Act just to throw some red meat at the right and have everybody just kind of get this spending package kicked again? Is that the concept here?
I believe that that's what it is, and to give some people who want to vote for a CR cover, because they can say now, oh, it had the SAVE Act in it. We're going to make sure that we have all of the elections secure across the nation this year. Guess what? Tell me this one, Vince. If they pass, let's just say Chuck Schumer had a stroke of conservatism and concern for the nation, and he said, we're going to pass that. We can't even get it enacted and implemented by this year's election.
Right.
This whole thing is disingenuous and dishonest, and I respect the people across Montana more than to lie to them by saying we're going to pass this piece of legislation and it's going to make sure we have secure elections. It's not. And all they're doing is looking for an excuse to continue spending, to continue policies. I've never voted for a CR. We have a job to do up here. Let's go ahead and do our job. And I'm willing to stay where I need to for as long as I need to make that happen.
Senator Mike Lee expressed support for this scheme earlier this week. I like Senator Lee. He said, hats off to Speaker Mike Johnson for attaching the SAVE Act to the September spending bill. He said if it's a non-starter with Democrats to deter non-citizens from voting, they're going to have to explain them. That's Mike Lee's position. So, in other words, like the people who are supporting this arrangement, Congressman Rosendale, are saying this is an effort to force this out into the public during, especially an election year, to make it crystal clear that it's Democrats who are trying to allow non-citizens to meddle in our elections. Do you think that's a worthwhile exercise?
Do you think that is breaking news? Do you really believe that is breaking news? People know that. Again, the House passed House Bill 2, which was to secure our border. The House passed the SAVE Act.
Yes.
We have sent those to the Senate. They are lying there right now. This is all an attempt to justify passing another CR. If you pass a CR, you continue to do the same thing, okay?
Yeah.
With different people in the seats, and expect you're going to get different outcomes just because you have different people in the seats. A CR continues our spending, it continues our policies, and I can't support it. And by putting this vanilla ice cream on top of this crap sandwich, it doesn't convince me that I should be doing it. It's the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
And again, I will say it's disingenuous, it's dishonest, and I think more and have more respect for my voters than to say, oh, yeah, we're going to do this, because they know. Everyone in the House that votes for this knows that when this piece of legislation goes over to the Senate, it's going to come back without the SAVE Act, and then now this thing is in motion. They're going to be able to get the Democrats to support it once it comes back, and there it is. So be honest. That's all.
I really like your point of view on this. I'm not sure where I settle up on it just yet, but I find your view very compelling. And but one difference between the House passing the SAVE Act, which of course it did, and passing H.R. 2, which of course it did, with just those pieces of legislation, the media ignore it. The media just like, who cares? That bill's not going anywhere. We're not even going to pretend it exists. They don't cover it at all. The difference with a spending fight is they have to come back to the American people and give them some explanation for what all the hubbub is about. Why are they fighting over the continuing resolution? What could possibly be the fight right now? And when you start asking that question, the answer starts being made known to more and more Americans that, well, Democrats would like non-citizens to vote.
Look, we've done this before. We've gone through this exercise before. Unless you are willing to have a hammer, unless you are willing to do something about the Senate stripping out the provisions that we want to implement, they're going to be stripped out. It's a bad bluff. It's just a lie. We sent legislation, you remember this, directly after October the 7th, when Hamas terrorists went in and killed innocent Israelis. And we passed a piece of legislation to send $14 billion to Israel, and we were going to take the money. We had a pay-for provision built in it, the House did, that we were going to take it from the over-bloated budget that the IRS had that they were using to attack American citizens. We sent it over to the Senate. 2 days later, Chuck Schumer stood on a stage in front of a mass of people on the mall grounds, the official mall grounds there in Washington, to rally to support Israel, and nobody called him out after he refused to bring that legislation up.
Good point.
He refused to even bring it up on the Senate floor, and yet he was out there professing and proclaiming his support for Israel. So a CR with the SAVE Act attached to it that the Senate knows the House isn't going to do anything about that. If they strip it out, it's going to be stripped out.
It's an excellent point. So do you get a sense that there are other members of Congress who share your view, or is this a lonely quest right now?
There's a lot of people that share my view, but I have discovered that there are very, very few with enough courage to stand up and say so. The emperor's not wearing clothes, Vince, and more people better start recognizing that. We've got a $35 trillion debt, and this legislation that they're talking about doing right now is going to do nothing to help us reduce our debt or to secure our election.
So,
because the election provision will be stripped out, and they're going to continue spending again at levels that I voted against or policies that I voted against.
So I know I'm not going to change your mind. I'm not going to attempt to. And in fact, you probably will change my mind in the end on this subject. But one of the arguments that the speaker seems to be making here is that this CR would only bring us to March of next year, meaning it would allow the incoming president, Donald Trump, to guide the actual budget process and not allow the White House now to do that, not allow the Democrats who control the Senate now to do that. Is that in any way a respectable argument?
Okay, 1974 Budget Act, okay? So we're 50 years into it.
Yeah.
4 times they have utilized the appropriation process on time. 4 times. Again, I just don't see where having different people in the seats and you're using the same process is going to change that. We couldn't forget about $1 trillion out of the spending. We couldn't cut $1 billion. We couldn't cut $5 or $10 million. Take my buddy that you've had on many times, Andy Biggs, down in Arizona, rep from Arizona. We couldn't get a few $1 million cut out of this thing. This is nothing more than an exercise to get them beyond the elections. It's self-interest to make sure that somebody who might be in a close district can point to something and say, well, I'm trying to look out for you. I'm looking out for my people too. I'm looking out for my people too.
And as you know, every spending fight, Republicans panic. They're good. We'll be stuck with the blame no matter what happens. So they try to bypass it, and that's how we end up getting stuck with exactly what you described.
They all campaign the same way that I do. They all campaign the same way that I do. That we're going to cut spending and we're going to reduce the size and scope of government. But when they're given the opportunity to do so, they all cower.
Congressman Matt Rosendale, thank you for bringing a unique and I think very honest perspective on this. Good to talk to you today, sir.
God bless you, buddy.
There he is.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon.
Congressman Rosendale from Montana.
Hello?
Hello, Gene. Hi there.
Hi. Oh, I'm on. Okay.
You're on.
To wait. I wanted to know, I have not heard anything more about Zuckerberg since his confession that he was so-called pressured by the White House to censor. Mm-hmm. I know from reading a lot, I do a lot of conservative reading, and that he was also guilty of giving millions to people to help harvest ballots and things.
Nearly $500 million in election administration funding across the country to help Democrats get elected.
Yeah, nothing's being said about that. I haven't heard anything about that.
Well, there's some good news on that front. At least 27 states have actually made that illegal now. So that can't happen in those states. Of course, it's not stopping them from trying to find other ways to manipulate the election. And Molly Hemingway, the great Molly Hemingway over the Federalist, she testified before Congress about this. She even wrote a book about it, and this is what that sounded like.
In the last presidential election, nonprofit groups with very strong ties to the Democrat Party and funded by one of the world's wealthiest and most powerful men, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg, took over government election offices, most notably in the Democrat areas of swing states. Since then, the efforts by partisans to further infiltrate government election offices to ensure favorable outcomes have only increased. I look forward to answering questions about how the private oligarch takeover of elections is a threat to our system of self-government.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So, Gene, the concern is definitely there, and you're right. In that letter that Mark Zuckerberg just put out, the one where he says, the Biden White House made me censor everybody, he also admitted that, I did spend a whole bunch of money in 2020. He says he's not going to do it anymore. I'm not doing that. He goes, even though I meant for it to be nonpartisan, I realize people say it wasn't. Well, yeah, because you dumped all of your money into Democrat districts. That's the explanation for that. Gene, thank you. It's a great issue to stay on top of as we barrel towards this presidential election. Stay with us. Tim Walz's family doesn't like him. Hey, good afternoon. It is 5:35 here at News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Oh, this is funny. Politico has a report out just in the last half hour that Kamala Harris's campaign is throwing in the towel and trying to change the debate rules. They surrender. They're going to stick to the debate arrangement that Joe Biden and Donald Trump's teams had set up in the first place. And here's how they describe it. This is funny. Privately, the team of aides involved in what will be nearly a week of prep in Pittsburgh are somewhat flustered about having failed in their attempts to convince ABC News, which will host the September 10th debate between Harris and Donald Trump. Oh, and which, by the way, will be heard here on WMAL. In case you don't want to watch ABC, you can spend some time with us. You can listen to it on the radio. It'll host the September 10th debate between Harris and Donald Trump to keep both microphones unmuted throughout the 90-minute debate, undoing one of the rules Trump and President Joe Biden's team agreed to months earlier. Harris's team made a public push on the matter last week when senior advisor for communications Brian Fallon acknowledged their efforts to unmute the mics and suggested that Trump's team, quote, doesn't think their candidate can act presidential for 90 minutes on his own. Trump, perhaps aware of the optics, said he was fine with unmuting the mics. But his team, namely senior advisor Jason Miller, who has been the campaign's representative in the meetings with ABC, has refused to agree to the rule change, according to a person familiar with the meetings. That left Harris's debate prep team in some upheaval as it decamps for Pittsburgh. Another person familiar with the group's private conversations described Karen Dunn, the longtime Democratic operative who's overseeing the prep sessions, along with policy advisor Rohini Kosoglu, as morose over the network's muting of Trump's microphone while Harris is speaking. They're sad. They're sad about this. And you know why? Because they wanted to engineer a stupid debate moment that they knew the media would run with no matter what. Kamala, all you have to, Madam Vice President, all you have to do is say, I'm speaking, and the New York Times is going to write 1,000 headlines supporting you. That's all you have to do. And so they're mad they can't manufacture this. Let's see. On Wednesday, Fallon sent another letter to executives at ABC accepting the current rules, but still arguing that muted mics will disadvantage Harris, depriving her of the chance to cross-examine Trump. Please. According to a third person familiar with the matter, the muted mics, Fallon wrote, will serve to shield Donald Trump from direct exchanges with the vice president. We suspect this is the primary reason for his campaign's insistence on muted microphones. Now, Donald Trump's insistence was, I want to stick with the rules that we set up in the first place, his campaign's insistence. With Joe Biden, you told us we couldn't have 3 debates. I wanted 3, said President Trump. But you said, no, you already negotiated this. You did it before. Will you stick with what you negotiated with? So the Trump campaign's response during all of this microphone nonsense is, how about you stick with what you negotiated with? If we've got to live by that rule just to have one debate with you, well, then we're going to say all the rules need to be the same. In fact, they worked out pretty great for Trump last time. They worked out really great for Trump last time, as Joe Biden self-immolated on stage. And then when Biden got lost in a thought, eventually when he ran up against the timer, microphone goes off, it's Trump's turn to speak. Kamala Harris may not be 1,000 years old, but her brain does not operate very well in these ad-libbed moments. And she could run into trouble here. You know, the campaign, first and foremost, wants to manufacture that I'm speaking moment, obviously. But the other piece is, despite all of their claims that she's some brilliant prosecutor who's amazing at cross-examining, none of those people actually think that. They know what she sounds like when a teleprompter is not feeding her lines. They know that she may meander into a couple of brick walls. They know that. They know that she's tempted by random observations about school buses and Venn diagrams and what can be unburdened by what has been. This is the kind of crap they're trying to stop her from saying. And the muted microphones, they're a designated endpoint that she's probably going to run into. They know that this is going to make her look bad. And so they're furious about it. There's another piece here. Oh, here it is. So scrolling down in this article, they say the vice president, according to a person familiar with all of this, the vice president, Kamala Harris, quote, can't have her Kavanaugh moment without sound on the microphone. A reference to Harris's interrogation of Brett Kavanaugh during his 2018 Supreme Court confirmation hearing before the Senate Judiciary Committee. She was awful during that. She was just awful. One of many Democrats who were disgraceful during that attack on Brett Kavanaugh, that disgusting lie that they advanced. And so she can't have her Kavanaugh moment without sound on the microphone. In other words, they want the mics on so that Kamala can interrupt Trump, so that she can disrupt the debate, so that she can manufacture these stupid headlines that our legacy media will carry in an effort to advance the chances that she wins the election. That's it. So there you go. So it appears today that this debate is on, that Kamala's campaign has agreed to stick with the original rules that were negotiated by, it was actually her campaign, right? Because she still has so many members of Biden's campaign on her campaign that technically it was her campaign that negotiated these rules to begin with. She's just merely the latest placeholder that the Democrats have put at the top of the ticket. So yes, you have to stick to what you agreed to. And they're worried. They're very worried, which is good news. I like that they're worried. This is important, but President Trump does have to have a good showing next week in this debate. It's key. I mean, to the extent that you're going to get any independents or any Democrats or any of these people just in one place seated watching him speak in an uninterrupted way, this is it. I mean, they're ignoring the rallies. They don't want to. The news media cover up everything he says. They distort it. So this is really the one opportunity. And Kamala Harris's campaign knows better than to create any more of those opportunities, which is why they're only doing the one debate. And in other words, President Trump needs to seize this and perform well during it this coming week. So, again, you will be able to listen to the debate. We'll be airing it. That's next week, September 10th, right here, 9 p.m. on WMAL. You'll be able to hear the ABC debate broadcast live. All right, let's go to the phones. I want to go to Andy in Washington, D.C. on line 1. Andy, good afternoon. You are on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Vince. I'm a retired radio broadcaster, started in the early 1980s, and I was a news broadcaster for 30 years.
Wow.
I remember in 1981, President Reagan was very concrete about his definition of a Marxist. Reserves the right to lie and cheat whenever it serves their purpose. And that describes Kamala Harris.
You know, did you try calling on this subject a couple days ago, Andy?
Yeah.
Okay, so you tried calling it, and it got me thinking, because I saw you on the board. We weren't able to talk to you at the time, but it got me thinking about this. And I looked up some old speeches of Ronald Reagan's talking about Marxist, Leninist worldviews. And the one thing I took away from Reagan's remarks is that he was crystal clear that the Marxist-Leninist virtue, there's only one, which is to advance the party power. That's it. Every other virtue is phony. It's a put on. It's just used to advance the only virtue, which is to advance the party power. And Reagan said it in a way that nobody else could ever say it. It was really amazing.
Well, two things. One is that's how Kamala can say, my values haven't changed.
Yeah.
And she can give totally different views.
Yes.
And number two, that's why the Walz family, today, in my view, the biggest political story, have endorsed Trump. 8 of them. Mm-hmm. And it has been sourced on a number of different news outlets.
Yes.
They're all standing there with shirts that say, Walz endorsed Trump.
Yes, the Nebraska Waltzes, the Walzes, the Walz family in Nebraska, they're all wearing these T-shirts, and they're enthusiastically supporting Donald Trump, as you just described. With, by the way, your excellent radio voice. I can see why you were in radio for so long, and we're probably really good at it. This is right. Tim Walz's family, at least some huge cross section of his of his extended family, all huge Trump supporters. We saw his brother just a couple days ago, Andy, was on Facebook and indicating, I don't support anything about my brother. In fact, if you knew what I knew, you wouldn't support him either. He's 100% opposed to his ideology. His name is Jeff Walz. And so all these guys are coming out, and which made me say, Andy, well, if it's good enough to like bring up, you ever heard of this Trump called Mary Trump? You've ever heard of her? She's a niece.
Sure.
Yeah, she's one of Trump's nieces. I don't think the Trump family has any real relationship with her. She just has the last name. She is related. And she's an antagonist. She's always out there saying, Trump's awful. And then MSNBC has her on. Tell us how awful your uncle is. He's so awful. And then and they feature her like crazy. Look at this. This is Walz's family. This is his brother. He's got his extended family. Why shouldn't we be talking about this, Andy?
I don't know, but I humbly ask if you have an opening. I'd be glad to sub for you someday.
All right. Well, I'll jot it down. Thank you, Andy. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Good to appreciate your voice here. So excellent points on both Ronald Reagan's views of Marxists, which, by the way, is always fun. It's just fun. Just go back and watch Reagan videos. It's totally worthwhile. And it's amazing. It's just amazing. The guy didn't need a teleprompter to sound like he was writing a book with his mouth. It was really phenomenal. And then on this issue of Walz's family, it's true, as Andy points out, that all these Walzes in Nebraska, they're all featured in this picture of just all posing together. They seem super happy. They're all supporting Trump. They're all supporting Trump. The red Walz, they're out there. They're supporting Trump. Actually, they're blue T-shirts, though. It says, Walzes for Trump. Nebraska Walzes for Trump. 8 family members. They all look well-adjusted. None of them look mentally ill. They all look really happy. They've got a big Trump flag behind them. In case you're confused, it's not from a prior election. It's this one. It says, Trump 2024, Take America Back, is the flag hanging behind them. And they all look great. They all look super nice. Now, Jeff Walz, it's interesting. I told you his Facebook page is where he was revealing to, I guess, friends that he is not on board with his brother's agenda at all. He thinks it's bad news. Well, News Nation has a reporter called Rich McHugh who was able to get in touch with Jeff Walz. And here's the takeaway from the interview. I'll play it for you right now so you can hear some of this. Jeff Walz really does not want to be a national media figure. He doesn't want to be sucked into this. It sounds like he doesn't want the hassle in his life. But he does say that he doesn't agree with his brother politically. And he even reveals kind of something, I guess, kind of embarrassing about his brother when he was a kid.
So I spoke with Jeff Walz for about 15 minutes this morning by phone. He said, look, he wants to clarify some things. He never intended what he wrote to be viewed by a national audience. It was on Facebook and probably the wrong forum. That said, he did not shy away from his words. He said everything he wrote is true. Take a listen.
It wasn't my intent, it wasn't our intent as a family to put something out there to influence the general public.
In an exclusive interview with News Nation, Jeff Walz, brother of Democratic VP candidate Tim Walz, says he wants to set the record straight after criticizing his brother Tim on Facebook, saying he's not the type of character who should make decisions about our future and that he's, quote, 100% opposed to all his ideology. Former President Donald Trump quickly pounced, praising Jeff on Truth Social, writing, sounds like a really great guy, despite saying to his Facebook friends that he had thought long and hard about endorsing Trump on stage. Now he tells News Nation he wants no part of the election.
Oh, yeah. And we're not campaigning or anything.
Yeah, because the left would hurt him. He can smell it. He knows that they're out to destroy him. And he's looking at all of this attention. I'm sure he's received some of the most outrageous incoming you could possibly imagine.
Or him, or against him, or anything like that.
Jeff, who is a registered Republican and donated $20 to Trump's 2016 campaign.
They're look at this. They're like, we found the $20 donation to Trump.
Stands by his comments that he disagrees with his brother.
I will say I don't agree with his policies.
But he says his posts were intended to rebuke rhetoric that he was ideologically in lockstep with the vice presidential nominee.
It was a post that I made because I was getting a lot of feedback from my friends, old acquaintances, thinking that I was feeling the same way that my brother did on the issues. And I was trying to clarify just to friends. I used Facebook, which wasn't the right platform to do that for.
Jeff Walz says he hasn't spoken to his brother in 8 years.
There was just no contact either way, and it's too bad, I guess, that it worked out that way, because he is my brother yet and everything, and I guess, you know, you can disagree and still be civil brothers.
And he was surprised to find out about the nomination on the radio.
I will stand behind this 100%, was that we felt bad that we found out about his being picked as the vice presidential candidate from the radio on the way back from a trip a few weeks ago when it was announced, and we felt like we probably should have been given a heads up and some type of security, at least for a short time, because I guess that is a big thing.
He says there are no bombshells.
The stories I said I was referencing, I'll give you one example. We talked about it before, that my little brother, when we were younger, we would go on family trips and in a station wagon, and the thing was nobody wanted to sit with him because he had car sickness and would always throw up on us. That sort of thing. There's really nothing else hidden behind there. People are assuming something else.
Oh. Nobody wanted to sit next to little Timmy Walz because he would barf all over everybody during the car trip. And who knows what other skeletons this guy has in his closet. I can tell you one thing. His brother does not want to have his life destroyed by the left. And talk about who vetted these vice presidential running mates. Oh, it was Eric Holder. What a crappy job he did. Tim Walz's entire family's endorsing Trump. All right, you know, we really have had some big news items today, including the federal government once again meddling in elections and trying to claim that Trump, should he be elected, is only going to be elected by way of Russian meddling. Yeah, that's right. Or as President Trump would say,
now another Russia hoax.
That's exactly what.
Is this
that's
where you're
exactly
another Russia hoax. A big announcement by the Justice Department today. The Russians are trying to get Trump elected. With an account they call CNN California that has 7 followers. They're trying to censor you. That's what this is. It's a predicate for censorship. How many times do we have to see this story play out before you can instantly call it what it is? Instantly. The great one, Mark Levin, is up next here on the legendary WMAL.